I will like to take a moment to re-welcome to our program Dr. Michal Tyra. Uh, Michael was on yesterday on one of our panels. Obviously, we would love to hear more about you. So let's start with you reintroducing yourself, as this will be a slightly different audience.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm thrilled to be joining again. Yesterday was such a wonderful experience. Um, I've had a very unique career, I would say. It's been a bit of a windy road. I primarily am uh, a international development and human rights expert, and I've spent most of my career fundraising for nonprofits and social initiatives around the world. I spent just about 10 years working across Europe and the Middle East on youth development, access to education, climate justice initiatives. Got my PhD from the University of St. Andrews in international relations and human rights. Taught on political theory, international relations, and primarily international development for just about 10 years now as well. Currently, I'm serving as the Chief Strategy and Development Officer for BioAstra and a consultant on philanthropy for the Phoenix Philanthropy Group. For BioAstra, we are a biotech and space medicine company primarily looking to leverage astrobiology advancements in outer space for the benefit and transformation of healthcare here on Earth.
Yes, that absolutely is a very unique, multidisciplinary approach and a multidisciplinary career. So yes, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about what does it take to motivate young people as you are also on the teaching side, on the academic side? What does it take? What's the call to action? What works? What doesn't work? How are we messaging this correctly?
So I spent pretty much my entire time on my PhD working on youth rights and youth development issues. My entire thesis was on a critique of kind of global norms around what youth need versus what they say they need around political participation, social justice initiatives. And I've worked and talked to young people across the Middle East and Europe and the United States for decades on this issue. And uh, I think one of the major things that they need is not to be told what's important and what they need to be focusing on. And we need to be taking the time to talk to young people more, to get their voices heard, and then to engage them in ways that complement the activities and the initiatives that they're already doing, not trying to shoehorn them into existing paradigms and institutions and systems that we've developed in a way that we think fits the world and the current paradigm in a way that's convenient for us. So to be perfectly honest, I think we need to start in many ways from scratch. We need to reassess current systems for engagement and participation, both politically, economically, and socially, and start by asking the young people already doing work in these areas what they need to scale. What are the current barriers to getting them their voices and their messages out? Where are they finding the greatest roadblocks when it comes to visibility and messaging, to scaling engagement and participation, to funding? And we need to build systems and architecture that helps to mitigate the challenges that they're facing. And it needs to be culturally and community sensitive and specific. There's too much, especially globally. There's always a push for efficiency and um, simplicity when it comes to kind of finding a one size fits all solution. And with, a global community that's incredibly diverse, that has every region has very specific cultural, economic, and social characteristics. You need to tailor and customize your approach regionally and sometimes even hyper locally to the needs of the specific communities and the groups that are working there. And so we need to have that flexibility more built into our international structures and be able to be flexible and to tailor our approach to young people where they are and to build our messaging off of what young people are telling us, not trying to figure out or to tell them how they should be speaking about things, what they should be focusing on, where they should be spending their time.
We've in this conference we've had about 5 hours so far of youth programming, and by youth I mean as young as 13, and capping that at 22. Although of course we are all young, but looking at the next generation of youth, and we've had children from as far as Japan and from Africa and from all over the world. And we've had young adults, we've had family office next generation teenagers speak an hour about what they're doing, how they see this as progress. And you're absolutely right. The one thing that resonates is stop telling us what to do. But at the same time, the other thing that resonates is, well, if we want opportunity, we have to fit in your framework, right? So the way the framework is built is almost exclusive in allowing young people to further their initiatives. And if somebody wants to do something in a structure, something good, they have to fit into the structure. They have to get a nonprofit going. They can't take money because until then it becomes more complicated if you do.
Yeah.
So everything that they need to do to kind of build that vision outwards is so difficult for them sometimes. Yet they are doing it. So is there a balance here? I mean, obviously we have to look at policy and we have to look at ease of access, not only to resources but also to single window systems for the regulatory requirements for young people, right? But at the same time, you know, it's also a gap in funding.
Mhm.
So, what do you think?
Yeah, like everything else when it comes to these issues, it's not a black and white issue. There are structural limitations that we can't just dispel. There's a structure that the global economy and global political international system is built on. And to a certain extent, we have to work within those systems, or at least work on incremental changes to allow young people more access. So I think it really isn't um, a one size fits all, as I said. Some systems we're not going to be able to do anything with, but others that are causing substantial hardship or barriers to entry. Those we need to actually have the political will or look to generate the political will to actually uh, do something about. And a lot of that comes top down. Organizations, um, governmental entities, so governments, regional entities, stakeholders in different parts of the world take their lead on from the rhetoric and the guidance coming out of the major international institutions and business and corporate entities. So whatever the UN or the EU or any of the other important regional actors are doing when it comes to youth development and youth rights, as well as the major multinational institutions. Um, the other, the entities that are actually doing the work on the ground are going to take their lead from the rhetoric and the guidance coming out of those entities. So there's a responsibility at the top for organizations like Davos and its members, as well as um, the uh, um, the actual progenitors of international law and international norms to think clearly about what is something that we just have to deal with, whether it's, capital controls and all that stuff, and where can we move the needle to increase access to young people to be able to work in a way that's comfortable for them, where they've been able to generate significant progress despite the barriers that they've faced. And where do we need to bring young people along? Where do we need to encourage them to take advantage of existing institutions, existing opportunities for professional development, and tailor their approach where needed to better appeal to the current systems and structures where we can't currently do anything about them. So it is a balance, and that's a very deep question that I think I could have written another PhD on just that.
That's yeah, no, but I mean, in defense of all these organizations, there are youth programs. Every one of these organizations has youth education programs, and it seems like almost from what we hear on programming and around the world in education is that today it's a lot more easier to access these programs with obviously with Web3 coming in and then all of that. We are retooling how an AI is helping assist everyone in being able to access this. So there are some obviously giant leaps taking forward with the information technology developments that are enabling access or deeper access to information. So, as the education, previously we've had a gap, right? The gap has been there's lots of programs, but nobody knows how to access them. There was a problem where it was well, if the UN didn't send it out to every school, there wouldn't be children that in those particular institutions that would know how to access UN programs or to volunteer or how to gain education from the many UN programs for education or for the EU programs or for the US programs for that matter. So, but switching now to the other side of it and looking at healthcare, um, we have been focusing as a group on the evolution of digital healthcare delivery. As we look at kind of the problems we have in healthcare distribution, whether it's in rural populations here in America or in Africa or in Asia, one of the problems we have is that to increase infrastructure, the cost is prohibitive. So ideally, yes, we'd like, everybody would want an hospital in every city and small village across the world, but that's not doable. So what do you think about this side of it, and how is the research that's happening in space affecting digitization of medicine and medical delivery?
Yeah, and I think that there's a really important tie-in with the future of healthcare and the future globally of kind of the ability of human beings to thrive on a planet that is changing. And much of that is potentially climate change related, whether you're talking about, desertification, rising sea levels, droughts, and leading to, increasing, food scarcity, water scarcity, resulting conflict. You're seeing increasingly healthcare deserts, as you mentioned. And so it requires a level of innovation that goes beyond simply scaling existing infrastructure and bringing in the capital for that. It requires a new approach, and space offers a unique view and window into that. As we attempt similarly to scale up human presence in space, as well as to make long duration space travel or even interplanetary space travel possible, you require much of the same types of infrastructure that you would need in a more remote or less resourced area here on Earth. It's a place without access to significant resources. You have to kind of take with you what you're going to have. It has to be reliable. It has to be portable and modular. It has to be highly digitized. It has to be able to be updated remotely and be ready to serve um, unexpected, potentially, problems and crises as they come up. And that requires a view of healthcare that we currently haven't had. More is not always better. What's better is being able to better have adaptive systems that can be smaller, that can be managed by individuals without necessarily specialized training and medical degrees, and can work in remote environments without access to substantial, built-in power or water. And so as we develop these systems, and BioAstra is actually looking at incubating a technology that can serve this purpose. It's called Orbit, and I'm forgetting what the acronym stands for. But the idea behind it was a kind of a capsule, a pod that would be powered by AI, highly digitized, that would provide remote care and advanced diagnostics in the spacecraft for astronauts as they're going to moon bases or to Mars or to wherever. And these capsules can not only serve their stated purpose in a spacecraft, but they are well suited to be put on the backs of trucks, to be flown in aircraft, to be pre-positioned in orbit in satellite constellations and down mass to areas of need very quickly. Or they can be pre-positioned in communities that can't currently support a new hospital or a clinic and don't have the needed medical professionals on site to be able to deliver this. So building up and scaling, this is just one idea that we're working on. I know there's going to be numerous others over the years, but working on these types of systems and pre-positioning them in places and building up the needed kind of social familiarity with these systems and trust in these systems could have a transformational effect on how you see the uh, greater equity and access to healthcare moving forward. And we need to be significantly putting a lot of effort into this because the healthcare situation in the world isn't going to get any better. It's only going to get worse as we see the effects of climate change and all the kind of related issues to that get worse in the coming years.
No, absolutely. There's also the research side of that, of medicine in space. How do you see this as being beneficial?
Just like the systems need to be fully adapted to the unique and harsh environment of space, human beings also have um, we have a limited understanding of how human beings and the human body adapts and reacts to the rigors and pressures of outer space, microgravity, increased solar radiation, uh, astronauts within their first even 10 days to 2 weeks talk about a fog, a mental fog that comes over them, along with the kind of the nausea and everything that they have to deal with. And then we've seen, BioAstra, our founder, did the 2018 NASA twin study with Mark and Scott Kelly, which measured kind of the differences between two genetic twins, one on Earth and one in space. And we saw quite dramatically the differences in how the human body of someone genetically the same, changes over time. And we're looking at exploring how we can help adapt the human body to better withstand the pressures of outer space. And that has transformational and very profound potentially impacts for how we can better adapt to remote and harsh environments here on Earth. We're doing um, a expedition to Bikini Atoll, the site of innumerable nuclear testing by the United States in the 1950s and 60s, to assess and study how bacteria and organisms have adapted to significantly enhanced radiation and thrive despite the radiation. You see the same thing in Chernobyl. There's a number of places around the world where so-called extremophiles have adapted their DNA and their genetic composition to better um, thrive in their environment. And it's not just about, we're not talking about necessarily gene editing or anything. We're talking about seeing how the human body adapts and reacts in space. Um, that tells us a lot about when it comes to longevity, when it comes to um, everyday healthcare and preventative medicine. That's transformational, along with the work that is possible through when you're talking about looking at cancer research and the cycles for biological cycles in space are intensely accelerated. So we can see how um, cancer or different kinds of medicines and drugs react with our cells on a far greater accelerated timeline than we can here on Earth, which has obvious impacts for the potential to get drugs to market quicker and to study how diseases mutate on a faster scale than we can here on Earth to better potentially prepare for the next pandemic. So the work that we can do in space when it comes to developing next generation treatments to addressing longevity, to addressing genetic diseases and disorders, it's something that we can't do on Earth, and it could have an extraordinary impact on us as a species going forward in the next 20 years, and our ability from a research perspective to gain a better understanding of human biology and to help make humans healthier and thrive here for, generations to come.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I think longevity, as you said, is something that is obviously the the holy grail, if you would. And but at the same time, adaptability, as you mentioned, especially as we see environmental change. This is also becoming such a huge area of research because, as you mentioned, space allows us to do that research to prepare. Um, both from from a molecular development for pharmaceutical to device development to just general studies which are not necessarily geared as I would say in medicine, but more physics, but more multidisciplinary, that are you know that are creating these immense areas for improvement. So let's talk a bit about the multidisciplinary effect, right? So today, I joke with everybody in saying the best things in medicine that happen come from physics, right? So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I think there is a vital need to get people from multidisciplinary work into space medicine and space healthcare. We run a fellowship program at BioAstra that does exactly that. We look for and reach out to and welcome individuals that have related but not exact research and professional experience and get them more experienced and get them in working in space medicine. So we have postdocs and doctors in physics and microbiology and pharmacology, all that have an interest in the work that is being done in space and the potential for the future, but haven't had a chance to work in space medicine. And to be honest, don't really know how they could get a chance to work in space medicine. And we put them on programs and working on research projects with professionals working in the field so they can actually get that experience. We have an extraordinary workforce development need for individuals that are interested in making an impact in this burgeoning field, but may not have a space medicine degree because that doesn't really exist really outside of maybe a couple of different opportunities. So yes, we, as in everything, multidisciplinary views tend to see opportunities and perspectives that otherwise go unnoticed. So whether you're working in physics or microbiology or traditional medicine, um, space, because of the multitude of different variables and possibilities that exist there, the potential for you to make an impact in that field and to create have a hand in creating kind of this next generation, next paradigm that we want to see in space medicine is extraordinary. So yes, we need people from a variety of different fields who have different perspectives and expertise and experiences working in locate and remote locations, working with different types of populations, um, working in different scientific fields, even arts and culture. Like we need those perspectives. And there is valuable work that can be done, and there is an increasing amount of opportunities for training and getting people into the field.
Absolutely. Just to kind of resonate beyond what you just mentioned really quickly in saying, you need people from the liberal arts, you need philosophers, and you need sociologists, and you need their cousins, from every area, so that we can understand better how human beings are or cultures are behaving, or change that's happening in demography and in populations, in reproductive cycles, and in all the various areas that we're at this point seeing massive change. And it's not just environmental, it's not just it's societal, it's information based there, and we can talk about this for a long time, but seeing as we're running against the clock here, I wanted to firstly get two messages from you. One is, what's your message on research in space? And then the second message is, what's your message to young people? And how do you get them excited and involved?
Okay. I think that when it comes to research in space, um, I would like to communicate to everybody. And I think that it's important that we get the message out that work in space isn't just a playground for billionaires. It's not just a way to off-planet our problems, and it's not a place to escape from what often seems like a collapsing world. It's an opportunity for us to make the planet that we call home not only habitable, but extraordinary, and extraordinary for our children and our children's children all the way down. It's a chance for us to stay here and to thrive here. And it's a chance for us to address problems that have seemed for many, many generations to be intractable and just a reality of our human existence. And so I would absolutely um, like to emphasize that work in space is of interest and importance to everyone. And we need to have that message more clearly and more compellingly said to people who currently don't think that space has anything to do with their lives here on Earth. And to young people, I would like to say that, I'm not a scientist. I didn't grow up dreaming of life in space. Compared to many, I've had a very privileged opportunity to work where I have, but opportunities are increasing and access is increasing. And we live in a society where um, we have the opportunity to overcome barriers and to make dreams and our ideas and our aspirations a reality. And for many, that's more difficult. It's more difficultly said than done, but it is something that is possible. And I would encourage young people around the world to dream big, to see space as an opportunity for them to make a difference here on Earth, and to keep pushing, and to not necessarily view barriers as givens. Barriers and structural resistance can be broken, can be remade, norms can be changed. And we're working on that every day. And the work that's being done by extraordinarily brave and resourceful young people around the world has been transformational throughout history. Young people have been revolutionaries, have been innovators, have been pioneers, for thousands of years. I documented kind of the history of young transformational leadership and as part of my PhD. And um, this is something that's built into our human character, that young people push boundaries. They come up with new ideas and they don't take no for an answer. And that needs to continue and to grow as we move into a new paradigm where space and opportunities in space will shift how we do things here on Earth. So keep pushing, keep fighting, keep being rebellious. And that's going to be important as we move forward.
So, once again, this has been Davos Worldwide, a conversation with Dr. Michael Tyra. Thank you so much. There's so much more to discuss with you, and perhaps we will do so in Davos and for the Davos conference. But your message resonates, and I think that it is a message that is timely and that is important, both bridging what we're doing, the efforts in space, and not making it just about the various launches, the various things that are happening, and who's going up to view space, but more about the actual science and development that's happening in space, and then how to get involved as young people and to dream big. So, Michael Tyra, thank you very much again. Greatly appreciate you taking the time and look forward to further communication with you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.